Hi, I'm Sari van Pooij. I'm the director of Intact Academy, where I teach coaches and consultants to deal with problems at the individual level or support and challenge people at the individual level through coaching, and to do team coaching and also to do organizational coaching, and later to become supervisors of coaches. So there's a whole gamma of programs you can follow if you go to www.intactacademy.com. The other thing I do is I do agile business innovation. So what I do is I help businesses innovate. And that's one of my passions, and I'm really busy with it. I'm doing some projects now in Holland in nonprofit organizations, which is fantastic to do. So I'll talk about that another time. The thing we're talking about now is team coaching. So we talked about the definition of team coaching and this triple or quadruple focus you need. We talked about levels of what do you actually look at: structure, dynamics, psychodynamics. And I just want to go through those levels one by one. So there's some idea of what are you looking for? And we're only talking diagnostics now. We'll talk interventions later. So when we talk about the structure of teams, what are we looking at really? So if you want to have a healthy team, there's really two main rules, I guess. One is that all the levels are in sync with each other. I'll talk about that the next time. But the other thing is that within the structure, let's start with that, that there is clarity. So I'll give you an example. One of the things we look at is boundaries at the structural level. So boundaries for us is something very specific. We talk about the external boundaries of a team, which make the difference between the outside and the inside. So who's in the environment and who's actually in the team. And we talk about the major internal boundary, where there's a distinction between the leaders and the members. It sounds really technical, but it's quite simple, really. When we talk about the healthy boundaries of a team, we want them to be permeable enough to hold the team, and so closed enough to hold the team, and open enough to let new impulses come in, new people come in, new ideas come in. And this managing of the openness and closeness of a boundary so that the team remains healthy is really something that the leaders have to watch out for, but all the members can participate in that. So when we look at team coaching, we look at, hey, what's going on with the boundaries? You know, if they're completely closed, it becomes almost like a sect. So, you know, people are closed in, they're not willing to take information or other people in, and they're kind of functioning as if they're a little bubble in the whole. Of course, when you're under stress, that usually happened, but the trick is to keep that space a bit open so that people get renewed and regenerated also by new ideas and new people. That's true for the membership boundary, but it's also true for the leadership boundary. So sometimes I find in teams that the leadership is completely encapsulated. They're isolated in an ivory tower, we say, and they're doing their top-down thing. And nowadays, really, that doesn't fly. People don't really like top-down leadership, but they want to be involved and participate. And truth to tell, you know, the problems nowadays are so complex that we can't solve them on our own. We need everyone in that team to participate. So one of the first things I look at structural level is how open or closed are the boundaries? Does that suit the purpose of the team? That brings us to the next area of the team diagnostic at this level is the purpose of the team clear? It's really a psychodynamics thing, but it has a lot of relationship with the structure as well. And I'll talk about purpose a bit later. The second thing, I'm keeping you on tenterhooks, but the second thing really after boundaries is we look at roles. So are the roles in a team clear? Sometimes I see really mixed roles. So we talk about roles that are, sometimes people have 2 roles or 3 roles. That creates unclarity. When are you wearing what hat? But sometimes roles are empty. There's vacancies and people are having to work really hard. It creates a lot of pressure in a team. That's not good either. Sometimes we see that people are really unclear about where does my role start and end, and where does your role start and end. So you have a lot of tension in a team because the overlap isn't clearly defined. So, or the handover points, I like to call them. So for instance, Johnny is responsible for purchasing and Peter is responsible for production. You know, Peter has to check if all the stuff is in the house, but what was his name? Johnny, I think, has to make sure that it's in-house and actually handed over to Peter. Sometimes those handover points aren't really clear. And so you get tension in the roles. And so when we do role clarity, we not only look at are the roles themselves clear, but are the handover points clear? Very important in a team. The third thing we look at in a team structure to see if it's healthy or not is the hierarchy clear? I just had a team where, really interesting, some people are going back to self-managing teams. So they've taken out layers of management and they think that a team can manage itself. I happen to not believe that's true. It's not a happen. I used to implement self-managing teams in the 90s, and we took it over from Volvo, who started with that. What people have to understand is that Volvo is in a Scandinavian context, and Scandinavians are very self-managing themselves. So it makes sense that for them, it worked. For us in Holland, it's a bit of a different story, because people don't usually agree in Holland, and I'm sure that's true in other contexts as well. So I've kind of gone away from self-managing teams. I really started to embrace more the psychoanalytic thinking that all of us grow up in a system where there are leaders, and it's actually something we gravitate to naturally. It's very difficult to do self-managing teams without a role of leadership in there. I always say in a team, the members can do maximization, but the leader has to do optimization. So what I mean by that is the members can go, oh, I want 100% this, 100% that. The leader is the one who weighs the interests of all parties involved and looks at the strategy and can then take a decision how to divide the resources. If you're in a self-managed team, that's really difficult. So I see a lot of self-managed teams go into loops. Why am I saying this? Because I truly believe you need a hierarchy to have sanity in a team. You have to know this is staff, this is leadership, these are the people who know what needs to happen at the work floor. They all have their different level of decision making, but I don't think it's true that people can live in teams and work in teams without clear leadership. Even if it's rotating, there has to be clear leadership. The fourth thing and last thing I look at in the structure of teams is the processes, and more specifically, the decision-making processes. So if I want to see if a team is working well in terms of structure, that's where I go first, even though I said it last now, because the unclarity of hierarchy and roles and boundaries usually results in really bad decision-making processes. So what the complaint then is, we go around and round, or we never take decisions, or we discuss things and things aren't really written down, so we don't know what we decided. And when I hear this, I immediately go, oh, boundaries, roles, hierarchy, is that clear? I say it last now because in terms of intervention, it's the thing that you do last. But really, it's one of the symptoms that I see first. Um, Theoretically, if you have clarified the boundaries, hierarchy, and roles, then almost automatically the decision-making process becomes much easier. I have a client now whose main complaint when they called me in was, we're all experts and we're all four founders of the team, but we never seem to get ahead. We don't take really clear decisions and we have different opinions and we want to respect everyone and we're friends, so we want to stay friends. And I hear this quite a bit. And so they were going round and round and round on the roundabout and never going forwards. And in the meantime, their competitors had gone forward. So they actually missed their kind of slot in the market. So one of the things that I did was help them clarify the difference between ownership and management, help them see that they have different roles, how their different competencies could connect together, how the output of one was the input of the other. And as if by magic, their decision-making process really took off. And now they're doing fine. They've caught up and actually exceeded their competitors. So often when the other symptom I have to say is when boundaries, hierarchy, and roles aren't clear, apart from decision-making, what you see very often is struggles around power. So one of the other symptoms I see when the structure isn't clear is that people really start games around who's the boss, who's dominant, who's submissive. Sometimes escalations, to see who's gonna submit first. But that's what I tend to see. And also, as if by magic, when you clarify boundaries, hierarchy, and roles, not only decision-making starts getting better, but also the power division becomes more clear. And then it's much easier to function in a team. So, long story short, for you, the question is, if you look at your team, how is the structure doing? How are you doing in terms of boundaries, hierarchy, roles? Can you see problems in the decision-making and in power struggles? If so, go back to, hey, what could I do at the structural level? Good luck.